If you've had success on Meta ads and you're ready to take that success and scale it up more with YouTube ads, then this is the episode for you. This is a conversation with Brett Curry from OMG Commerce. Brett's been in the game for a long time. He's been in digital marketing for 15 years, with the bulk of that over the last bunch of years focused on Google and YouTube. He's run YouTube spends for a whole bunch of brands, and big ones, small ones, omni-channel, D2C, pure play. He's done it all. And in Brett's experience, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can learn about how to run YouTube ads successfully and profitably for your brand. And so I just went piece by piece with Brett and thought about, how do we take what we know to work on Meta and get it over to work on YouTube as well. We talked about media buying. We talked about measurement, which is really tricky on YouTube sometimes. We talked about creative. We talked about shorts versus horizontal in-stream video for YouTube, everything in between. This is a really step-by-step, hands-on, easy to implement guide to how to win on YouTube, with Brett getting really specific. I personally found this episode extremely helpful. I'm going to send it over to the rest of my team for sure to think about and think about how do we scale on YouTube. You're going to find it successful as well. Let's get into it with Brett Curry, OMG Commerce, talking about how to win on YouTube once you've been successful on Meta. What's happening, Brett?
What is up, Andrew Faris, man? I am excited to be here and pumped to talk about YouTube. YouTube is having a moment right now. People are talking about YouTube, thinking about YouTube, dreaming about YouTube, or maybe it's just me, but I'm excited to be chatting about it.
That's my sense, is that YouTube is having a moment, actually. For a long time, here's my context for this. For a long time, I've thought there is simply no baseline reason why Meta ought to be crushing YouTube so much for video ads that drive profitable purchases for D2C brands. The inventory is good quality inventory. The people it's reaching on YouTube is everybody. Everybody watches YouTube. There's endless inventory. It might as well be limitless. I know people, the average YouTube session is like, whatever they say, like
42 minutes. Yeah, 42 minutes, I think, is the most recent number that I've heard.
Yeah. So just like, there's just plenty of time spent on YouTube, plenty of eyeballs. Like, Google should have plenty of targeting. They've been around for longer than Facebook has. So like any sort of algorithmic advantage, data advantage that you would expect Meta to have, it seems to me that Google should have plenty of data. So I've never understood why YouTube has been so bad for e-commerce brands relative to Meta. Like, why is it that D2C brands cannot spend dollar for dollar on YouTube what they spend on Meta? And sort of secondarily to that, maybe that's changing. Like, I'm just seeing, I have one client who's like getting closer to like their YouTube spend starting to come up with that, and they're not a huge brand. So let me start here, Brett. Like, that's my context for YouTube. I've hoped for this for a long time. It's one of the reasons I'm optimistic about e-commerce in general. Is it seems to me that inventory is going to open up for D2C brands and be more viable. But is it now? You said it's a hot topic. It's having a moment. Like, is it actually more viable now than it used to be, or are people measuring it better? Like, what is happening?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So my perspective is a little bit different in that I've been a YouTube fan since like 2016 or 2017. So I did a little bit of TV in the past, like pre-OMG. I did TV, radio, and offline stuff. And so I've always loved TV advertising. I also did SEO. So in the early days of OMG, we were an SEO company, believe it or not, back when that was a huge, huge thing. And so YouTube was kind of this blend of everything in my world. It's sort of like TV in some placements. There's some targeting that's similar to search-based ads, or at least you can build audiences that way. And so I've seen it work really well for years. Like we've taken brands from zero to $1 million a month in spend since 2018, 2019. But I do think there's a few things that are getting better. I think the way you can target is improving in some ways. Like, as an example, demand gen now just has legit lookalike audiences. I think Google's really advanced in a lot of ways, but like lookalike audiences been around Meta for what, 6, 7, 8 years. I don't know. Like they're just now coming around for demand gen. So I think that's a big piece, but really just the understanding of how you measure. There's a lot of clarity around that, and the understanding around how the creatives are different. There's understanding around that as well. And I think there's just a lot of people that are kind of reached a ceiling on Meta. And so now it's time for them to look elsewhere for the next level of scale.
Yeah, the TV comparison is interesting. But see, even the next level of scale, like, why wouldn't it be? Why would you have to wait to get to the next level of scale with YouTube? Do you see what I'm saying? Why do people sequence it like that?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things. I think one, Meta is just set up to be easier to get started, right? You can start with static ads and some copy. You can start with 15-second ads, vertical videos, just shot by influencers, pretty simple. With YouTube, you can start with influencer and UGC type ads, but you need some polish to it. You need some editing done to that. Generally speaking, longer form videos work better. So a minute to 90 seconds and higher for conversion focused campaigns. So you need a little bit longer video. And I think the speed at which the algorithm works on Meta seems to be faster. And then I think there's also just a lack of comfort if you're staring at a YouTube campaign for the first 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, the performance looks bad. You want to bail, right? You want to jump ship on that. Whereas with Meta, I think you see performance a little bit sooner, and so it's easier to tinker and kind of keep moving up. So I think you can introduce YouTube sooner, but I think it's less comfortable.
There's a lot there that will maybe help us unpack this a little bit more. So let's start with the thing you just said, which is you maybe need 3 or 4 weeks staring at it to see it perform. So what do you mean by that? So do you mean you could mean one of two things. You could mean that the performance, it takes more time for Google to sort of lock in on your customer and then replicate results, whereas Facebook maybe could do that right away. You could also mean that, in fact, your YouTube ads are producing value right away. It's just harder to see. Which of those do you mean? And so, or maybe just to put it more simply, why do I need to wait 3 or 4 weeks or whatever it is for my YouTube performance to get there?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things at play here. If you're running a conversion focused campaign, so that used to be video action campaigns, now it's demand gen campaigns, but you can do video only inside those campaigns. The algorithm inside that does take a little bit longer than Meta, and so sometimes you'll see direct conversions in those campaigns. Often you can hit your CPA target or get close, but generally speaking, not in the first 1 to 2 weeks. Like it takes some time for that to dial in. Now, I do think that there's a component here, and we run a lot of view-based campaigns for omni-channel retailers that are selling in Walmart or Target or other stores. Like we did this a lot for native. I think you can see results pretty quickly there. You're just not going to see it in platform, right? Someone sees the ad, they go to Walmart, they see the ad, they go to Amazon, things like that. I think it can work quickly, but if you're tracking that direct conversion in platform, you want to see that takes a little bit of time.
Is there the couple weeks of ramp up a function of time, or is it a function of dollars? Like what I mean is, let's say I had $100,000 to spend. Would it still take 2 weeks? Or could I spend it all in one day? And it's a
great question. Yeah. So there's a couple caveats to that. I was working with this brand. Can't say the name of it. They were doing like a financial product, like a loan-based product. And we took it from like 0 to 6,000 a day in spend in the first week. It just happened, right? Like they were getting leads like crazy. So if you've got a proven hook and offer, you've got a lander that you've tested that converts cold traffic, you can scale pretty quickly on YouTube. But generally speaking, most of the brands we work with don't fully have that dialed in, right? They've got kind of a meta first content that we're tweaking and trying to modify for YouTube. So then there's a little bit of learning there that we have to do, but also the algorithm has to do. Yeah.
Let's stay on the media buying side for a second. Then you just mentioned lookalikes as a newer product feature for demand gen specifically. Let's say I am a D2C only brand. I'm exploring early 8 figures. I want to add YouTube on top of my already working Meta. On a pure media buying level, what do I do?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, and you'll answer this better than me, Andrew, but it sounds like most Meta brands are scaling with open targeting, right? If you're scaling on Meta, It's open targeting, lots of creatives. So
if they're listening to my podcast, I hope that's what they're doing.
Yeah. So on the YouTube side, what's interesting is we have had a number of brands. I mentioned a hair care brand a little bit ago, or maybe I didn't. Maybe that was on a previous podcast. But hair care brand, we took from 0 to $1 million in spend in the first 90 days. They were cranking. They mostly scaled with open targeting towards the end of that 90 days. But for the most part, we see success with focused targeting in the beginning. And my favorite, the lookalike audiences, that's newer for demand gen. My favorite audience to start with on YouTube is what we used to call custom intent. Now it's a custom segment, but basically you're building an audience of people based on their Google search behavior. So I think that's one unique piece that Google has that no other platform has, is they see all of your search behavior. So you can build an audience of people that have searched for a group of keywords either on Google or on YouTube. You build an audience around that. 8 times out of 10, that's our top audience to begin with. And sometimes we can iterate on that and expand that, make that bigger and scale with that. Or that trains the algorithm enough to where Google's like, aha, I see the ICP, I see the buyer here. Now we can go broad targeting and really scale from there. So that's what I like to look at in terms of audience targeting. Yeah.
If you're building an agency, if you're building a brand, whatever it is, you should be considering adding incredible talent to your team from the Philippines with my friends at More Staffing. More Staffing is the team I use in my agency business. It is the team I'm going to use to staff the brand that I am starting. I am thinking all the time Philippines first about my hiring process, and that's because I've had so much success hiring and integrating incredible talent from the Philippines with my friends at More Staffing. I could not have done this without More. More has been able to locate for me the best talent that is available, get them integrated into my team, recruit them, train them, give them ongoing coaching, all those things to make it so that I've had success building a team that is actually predominantly at this point in the Philippines, and I have no expectations of slowing down. And there's a reason for that, and it's not just about saving money. Like if you're thinking about, $5 an hour virtual assistants, how to make it as cheap as possible for hiring in the Philippines, you're probably not thinking about it right. You should be thinking instead about how to attract the best talent possible to your business, and yet have that talent also be more cost effective for you per head than if you did that same thing in the US. And that's what More makes available to you, hiring across all parts of D2C, whether that's supply chain, operations. I've got open job descriptions out right now for accounting, for post-production, for this podcast. I've hired designers, video editors, all with More, all with parts of that team, and I'm going to continue to do so. They've been a sponsor of mine for like a year and a half. I'm literally about to hang up from this call and go hang out with members of their team who are in California for a little bit. Like, I just am a huge fan of everything that More is and does. And you should at least take a call to see if there's the right fit for you. Get some resumes, see if there's the right fit for you. There's no commitment to doing it. Just see if there's incredible talent in the Philippines for your business at manager, director, or even executive levels across every part of your business. More even guarantees that people they place in your business will last for a year. If not, they will replace them for you at no additional recruiting fee charge, right? So basically for free for you. So go to morestaffing.co/AF, morestaffing.co/AF to look into whether or not hiring in the Philippines is right for you. I think it probably is. You should be exploring it. morestaffing.co/AF. Go check it out. Also, along those same lines, this would be, you're saying that's all at these days within a demand gen campaign, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And a demand gen campaign, just so we're super clear with everybody, is going to be a mix of all placements on YouTube, but it's YouTube only, or is there going to be some display in there, some search in there?
Yeah.
How's that working these days?
So the nice thing about demand gen is you can select. So if you just kind of with default, demand gen is going to put you in a lot of different places, including display. We're seeing the most success with demand gen though by just selecting YouTube. And even more than that, you can sub-select under YouTube. So you can choose in stream only. So those are kind of the pre-roll, mid-roll video ads. You can choose in feed. So those are kind of like the what to watch next, or they show up in the search results. Or you can choose shorts. So you can choose all of them. You can choose one of them. And you can really exclude everything else. And so that's what I recommend. Generally speaking, you don't want to throw display into the mix here. In addition to this, let's purely keep this YouTube. And generally speaking, I want to select all of those YouTube formats. If I had to pick one, I would go just in stream, but I like to add in stream, in feed, and shorts as well.
Okay, I have many questions. Let's say really me buying though. Okay, and then here's another thing. Somebody who's listening to my podcast in particular is hopefully convinced that they should be running manual bids on Meta ads. I believe there is a challenge here with language. and I've actually only realized this, I think, recently. When I say manual bid, what I mean is a target ROAS or target CPA, as opposed to an automated bid or an automatic bid, which would be you just give Meta a budget, Meta spends all of it. I think those terms are flipped on Google.
They absolutely are.
Okay,
it's so funny. I've heard you talk about manual bidding, and I'm like, but why? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It is.
So
it
what
is
I mean
the
is
reverse for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it has confused many conversations. Okay. So let's say I'm launching a demand gen campaign, and okay, let's make my budget on launch. Let's make it 50 grand a month. Okay. That's what my budget is. So a little, like almost $2,000 a day. Okay. And I'm just gonna try and spend this, get as best of a return as possible. I'm gonna set it up the way you just said: demand gen, YouTube only, and then I'm gonna select all three of the placements that you just mentioned: in stream, in feed, and shorts. Okay, they're all in there, so everything is there, but no display. All right, so that's what my budget is. That's what my spend is. Let's also say that is $100 AOV. So what would that be at a 1-to-1 ROAS? That would be, I think, $500
CPA
for the month.
Yeah.
$100.
Okay, yeah,
CPA.
you're right.
Okay,
Right.
great. Yeah, sure. Whatever. $100 CPA is the most important thing. So you're getting 500 purchases per month, basically, at that point. Okay. Let's make it all 600. So then it's 20 per day. Okay. That's easier. All right. So that's the setup. So $60,000 budget, 600 purchases in the month, 20 purchases per day. That's what I'm aiming at. In that setup, how ought I to bid from launch through like continuing? So you said targeting, you just gave a couple examples of how to target, but how ought I to bid?
Yeah, so there's a few ways to look at this. Google's really pushing value-based bidding, so like target ROAS as more of their goal. They're really pushing that. I still prefer target CPA bidding for YouTube. It's the most stable. It's been around the longest. It's what we've scaled with the most in the past. So there's a comfort level there. Gives you some control too, so you can move that lever up and down just a little bit. There's a couple ways to look at it. At that budget, if I knew that I was onto something with the hook, like the hook had been tested in Facebook, if the lander was proven, I may lead with target CPA because it's the most stable. It's not going to get out of whack. So I wouldn't mind to start there, especially if you're spending, what is that, $1,500 a day type of thing.
Yeah.
So
I moved it up. I took us to $2,000 a day to make the math easier. So $2,000 a day.
So $2,000 a day. Then you're bidding $100 target CPA. I would start there. Not a bad idea at all.
From launch. So I'm not going to have a problem. I'm not going to have a problem where like Google's going to be like, we're not going to spend it all at launch because
it
we don't know your
happen.
CPA.
It can happen.
Yeah.
So, but you're giving it a lot of room. So you're giving it $1,500 or $2,000, giving it a pretty big target CPA bid. $100, or maybe you start at 120 or something, just to give it a little bit of room, and then you come back down. So with that, I think it's going to spend. I think it's going to get some traction. If you started with a smaller budget and you didn't really know about the ads, then sometimes it's better to start with maximize conversions. I generally don't like to stay there, but maximize conversions, that kind of goes to what you said you didn't like on Meta, but that's where it's like, I'm going to spend this budget if I'm YouTube, but I'm going to try to get you as many conversions as possible. What that does is that helps the cold start piece, where like it allows Google to start spending. And generally speaking, if everything is kind of lined up well, like you'll get decent conversions. Then you transition to target CPA to scale from there is generally what I like to see.
Within that, you can transition in a campaign that's already live from max conversions to, okay, yeah, you can't do that in Meta. So I guess maybe you could in an ASC campaign. Anyway, so okay, that's great. And then let's talk a little bit within that about, what about excluding past customers? Is that anything I need to know about that?
Yeah, I would definitely do that. There's a couple of schools of thought here. Some people say like, hey, leave your customers in there, train the algorithm, and then remove it. That's not a bad idea. I still don't mind to just remove them from the beginning, like create some structured audiences based around your customer search behavior. Let that guide the algorithm. Remove customers. I still prefer that. So basically that's just adding a customer match list, so your email list, uploading that to Google, excluding that at the campaign level, and now you're set and reaching net new customers. So
okay, so let's talk about scaling it. So let's say everything's going well, you're hitting those numbers. I want to come to measurement in a second, but scaling it first. Let's just assume that your measurement is solid. the money's coming into your bank account at a number that is in line with the CPA you're getting on platform, whatever, or you've determined the platform CPA the way you need to for it all to work, right? So you're hitting your target and you want to start scaling. Okay, so for me as a meta guy, what I would do is very comfortably double the budget and just maintain my manual bid, maintain my, my bid cap or my target ROAS or whatever, where it is. So I've got my CAC target or my ROAS target right where it needs to be. And I would have no fear about sort of letting it rip. I have found Google buyers to be much more nervous about that in general.
It's very true. It's very true.
Tell me how I ought to think about scaling a campaign if it is hitting my target.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So almost all of my seasoned media buyers that work for OMG have the same like conservative mindset. We can scale, but usually we're looking at like, hey, let's lift the budget 15% a day, right, or 20% a day. I generally speaking, if it's a client that's willing to test, I like to press down the gas a little bit harder. The one that I mentioned before, we went from like $0 to $6,000 in a day in spend in the first week. That was me, and I knew the client, like we were friends, and he's like, just go, and so I did. But usually, what Google's going to do is they're going to quickly, it's going to say you're running out of daily budget. Here's the recommended budget, and sometimes it's double, triple what you're spending right now. I do think it makes sense to spend a little bit below that, right? So maybe you're at 2,000. It's saying we can spend $5,000 a day. Okay, maybe bump it to 3, or maybe bump it to 2,500. See if that holds. But generally speaking, like if you bump the budget and you're not messing with the bids, I think you're relatively safe. However, as you get to, like, as an example, I mentioned this hair care brand. For quite a while, we were stuck at like 2,500 or $4,000 a day in spend. We had to go broad targeting. We had to narrow down to just a couple of videos. Like there's a few things we had to do to really scale. So sometimes if you go beyond that 2,000 a day, the performance will drop off. But generally speaking, if you keep the bids the same and you increase the budget, I don't worry about it too much. I watch it closely so that we can move back if we need to. But where things really get wonky is if you change the bids and budgets together. That's when things can get messy, right? So I go from $100 target CPA bid to $120, and I raise the budget. I think you're kind of asking for trouble at that point.
What if I go from 100 to 90 and I raise the budget?
So it does seem that YouTube is more sensitive to bid changes than to budget changes. So that could work, but what I would look at is if you're bidding 100 and you're consistently hitting 120, dropping that down to 90 could work, but it could also just completely kill it and just could shut it down completely. So then you got to go back to the bid. Occasionally we've looked at campaigns where we're like, okay, we've tinkered with this one a little too much, and so let's pause it. We're going to spin up a new one, and kind of reset. So yeah.
I am really excited to tell you today about Workspace 6. Workspace 6 is a private, closed community for e-commerce operators and executives. It's people running 7, 8, and 9-figure stores and their high-level executives in those businesses, sharing their knowledge with one another and with you as a member of that community. Workspace 6 makes it possible so that whether you are struggling right now or whether you're killing it right now, there are people around you at different stages of business, near yours, just past yours, just behind yours, where you can share learnings, understand what's working, understand what's not, and get moving forward in your business, growing it profitably. I'm a huge fan of the people behind Workspace 6. I've been friends with them for a while. Their newsletter is basically the only newsletter I have read like religiously that comes out. And so I am so happy to recommend this to you. Also because Workspace 6 is extremely low risk for you. It is $1 for the first month. It's $99 a month after that, and there is no commitment. It's primarily a Slack-focused community, so you can have real-time conversation with other operators like yours. And here's the good news. I'm not allowed in Workspace 6 because I am a service provider, and apparently multiple of my clients are in Workspace 6, and they need a place where they can talk to one another and to other people about whether or not I'm doing a good job without me trying to sell them something. Same with software providers as well. It's a place where you can get that kind of review, that kind of collaboration, that kind of camaraderie, and I think that is a wonderful thing that I am not allowed in there, that people can talk honestly with each other. It makes it so that you can get tons of value out of the community. Go to workspace6.io to look into more of it today. Workspace6.io. I'm a huge fan of these guys. Like I said, go check it out today. Workspace6.io. Get started, join the community, learn more, build a more profitable business. Okay, and then what about loading in creative for this? Again, so from a meta perspective, the way I would do this, and this is just like always the touch point that I'm thinking about. From a meta perspective, what I would do is launch as much creative as I wanted in the ad sets. I wouldn't worry too much about it. I would regularly advocate to people that they do not turn off ads manually. Unless they're just not spending really at all, then go ahead and turn them off. But I'm not going to. I've given Meta a target and said, hit this target, spend. So if it's spending, it like quote unquote believes. I mean, what it really does is it probabilistically forecasts that you're going to hit the target. It doesn't believe anything, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I hope not. Maybe it's AGI
in its soul, and it's AGI soul. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. But yeah, if I'm doing the same thing on Google, is there an incentive to just like hammer a ton of creative there, let it all rip, and let Google pick the winners and just let it go? Or do we need to be a little more methodical about this?
Definitely need to be more focused and more methodical. So there's a few real benefits here. One benefit is we've seen some ads like for Moon by Cindy Joseph, or kind of in the early days of native, where one ad would be the winning ad for like 12 months. Like it would just keep cranking and keep working. So one interesting thing that Google/YouTube does here is they pick favorites very quickly. And I can't always tell why they pick that favorite. I think it's based on views and based on engagement. It's not always based on CPA. And so we found better results if we just start with like 3 to 5 different creatives. And really, inside of an ad group, you don't want more than about 5 different variations. You can test a little more than that. So it could be 5 unique ads with like, there's a version for desktop, so it's the 16:9. There's a version for shorts, which is a little bit shorter. You know, if your other video is 90 seconds, the shorts video has to be under a minute, and then maybe it's more vertical. So like you can have different versions like that. But generally speaking, like 5 separate concepts is about all you want inside of an ad group. And then kind of the same thing with ad groups inside of a campaign. Google will pick favorites pretty quickly. And most of your spend is going to go to 1 or 2 of those ad groups. We like to limit the number of ad groups per campaign as well to usually just 2 to 5, somewhere in that range.
If I'm not hitting my target, I want to start, or I can't seem to scale anymore and I want to keep scaling, what do I do? Do I add more creative to those existing ad groups? Do I launch new campaigns? Do I add new creative but in a new ad group? What's the sort of, how do I stack spend on top of each other?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So there's a few things you're looking at, right? Almost always when you run a campaign, even if it's not hitting goals globally or at the campaign level, you can drill into some specifics that are working. So maybe there's a combination of this audience and this creative and this placement is working. So let's lean into that more. Or what can we learn about that? Okay, it's actually this cut of this creative is working really well on connected TVs. So let's do more of that. So let's shift that. So generally speaking, if we're looking to grow a campaign, if we find, okay, we got more ideas for how to expand like an audience based on someone's Google search behavior, I may load that in the same campaign. So maybe spin up a new ad group or just load that audience to that existing ad group. But if it's like, okay, I'm learning something here based on the audience and the creative, but I want to start I think I should start a whole new campaign. It's generally easier to start a new campaign if you're going to really change up the targeting than it is to layer onto an existing campaign. So it seems like this is what I'm hearing in Meta. It's like just a few campaigns, right? But just like thousands of creatives. With YouTube, I would have campaigns that are more focused on a specific audience type. So if I'm doing based on search behavior, that's going to all be in kind of one campaign. If I do like a lookalike audience, that's going to be in a campaign. A broad targeting, that's going to be in one campaign. So generally speaking, that's where we've seen the best results with YouTube.
And those campaigns aren't going to fight with each other?
There could be some overlap. Yeah. So there's this interesting phenomenon where it's like sometimes you need to separate out a campaign because something is getting buried inside of a campaign. It's just not seeing the light of day. Maybe that's a budget issue. So all you need to do is lift the budget and then everything does kind of see the light of day. but maybe it's just that Google's picked a favorite in this campaign. You need to split it out into its own campaign. But then I think you've got to watch it if you've got dozens of campaigns, if they're hyper targeted. There can be some overlap, and then maybe they do fight with each other a little bit. But Google's pretty good about their ad rank score, and so like, hey, what's the most relevant ad based on bid, based on targeting to show this unique user? So generally speaking, I'm not concerned if we've got 3 to 6 to 10 campaigns going, if we've got some serious budget there.
That's really helpful, Brett. That's a lot of detailed media buying questions to start this off. But I hope what happens is that people who are listening to or watching this, which I assume is a more meta focused audience, if they're listening to my podcast, maybe we'll have some places to start if they want to start trying to work on YouTube ads themselves. Probably also, by the way, and we'll talk more, go follow Brett in a couple of different places, including Ecommerce Evolution podcast. You're talking about this kind of stuff all the time. So things like that would be a good place to follow up. So anyway, or maybe now's a good time to also plug to go to omgcommerce.com and talk to Brett and his team about doing the work for
Absolutely.
you. So there's that.
Always happy to do a jam session. I post on LinkedIn quite a bit. I did a course with Ezra Firestone on YouTube. So yeah, we got some content out there.
A bunch of stuff there. Yeah, great. And we'll link a bunch of that in the show notes, of course. Just make sure send me that stuff, Brett, and I'll get it in there. Okay, let's move over to measurement a little bit. So I did this podcast with Olivia Corey that made some rounds.
Dude, such a great podcast. Great podcast.
Yeah. I was and Olivia gets all the credit here in her team, right? Like I basically just asked questions about it, but she had this data set showing their incrementality focused meta-analysis of hundreds of incrementality tests from YouTube ads to really get a sense of sort of a baseline of how YouTube is performing in incrementality tests relative to what YouTube tells you your performance is on click-based conversions. Okay. And the highlight, right? The headline result here is that your YouTube campaigns are probably performing 70% better than what your click-based conversion numbers are showing you in your Google Ads dashboard, according to incrementality testing. She's got a bunch of reasons for that, including that a lot of YouTube, for example, is viewed on TV. A huge amount of YouTube is viewed on TV. There's literally no way to click that ad, so you can't run a click-based campaign. So there's a bunch of stuff there. I won't ask you to comment on sort of those incrementality tests, but I'm just curious, are you guys thinking about measuring this sort of thing with your clients, whether that's a D2C pure play client or an omni-channel client? How are you guys thinking about this?
Yeah, man, and that, as a longtime YouTube fan, that podcast was it's just the best, because there's never been a study of that magnitude about YouTube. And actually, just to reframe that a little bit, so it's actually 3.4x better, right? So if you're seeing a 1 ROAS in platform, it's more like a 3.42.
That's right.
And so another way to look at it is 70% less, is kind of a way to look at it. So there's a number of things at play here, right? So I think this is the biggest hurdle. Creative is a huge hurdle. Measurement is a big hurdle. It takes work to measure YouTube, right? So one thing I'll mention, this hair care brand I was talking about before, got them to about $1 million a month in spend. We had to pause for a couple of reasons for a little while. We were also running their Amazon. So we're full channel Amazon, doing their organic, doing their paid, everything on Amazon. We noticed when we paused YouTube, branded search volume cut in half. So we stopped YouTube, and we're spending a lot. Stop that. Branded search on on Amazon cut in half. We're like, oh shoot, we gotta pay attention to this. And so what they came to believe later, and they had a data scientist on their team, they said for every one D2C sale we were tracking with YouTube, they felt like they were getting 2 on Amazon. Now that's pretty aggressive. That's a lot. But that's what they believed. And so they had data to back it up. And I think based on what Olivia said, that's not far-fetched, right? It's not too hard to believe. And so there's a few things we're looking at. We're still, for the most part, running conversion-focused campaigns. We're running demand gen with a target CPA. We're trying to get D2C conversion. So we're looking at that. But this does work best if it's a multi-channel brand. So someone that's selling on Shopify and Amazon and ideally retail stores if you're doing all of those things. So I'll give you an example. We did a big 8-week push for Arctic coolers. Are you familiar with Arctic, Andrew? Yeah, so Yeti competitor, wheeled coolers, tumblers, awesome products. So they heard me speak at an event at the YouTube LA offices. We connected, did an 8-week push on YouTube. They wanted to see if they could drive sales to Walmart. Like, can we run YouTube around targeted stores and create Walmart sales lift? And so we did similar to kind of what House does with their incrementality test. We did match market geographic tests. We did 19 test markets, 19 control markets, or basically the same size, same sales volume, same demographics, things like that. We ran YouTube in 19 of them. We held out 19 of them, did a comparison with the help of Arctic's data scientist team. And so, but what we also set up there was we wanted to measure search lift. So this is a tool that Google offers. I know Meta does brand lifts, Google does brand lifts. I'm not a huge fan of brand lift. It's like all survey based. I don't know. It could be helpful, but I generally don't like it. But search lift, that's scientific and that's specific. So basically what they're doing is they're saying, hey, here's a group of people that saw your ad. Here's a group of people that did not see your YouTube ad. How did that change search behavior? Did they search? Yeah. And with Arctic, we saw like a 231% brand and search lift with the YouTube campaign. So that was significant. If you're driving traffic to Walmart, Target, CVS, like one of the big national chains, Google will track in-store visits. So they'll be able to tell you like, hey, you ran these campaigns and 7,000 people visited a Walmart store. Now, I love this. It's maybe a little bit creepy. It's also a little bit harder probably to track now. It's just people that opt in or whatever. But it's not fully telling because if you're tracking like Walmart, what if I was going to Walmart anyway? Like what if I was just going there to get my groceries? I wasn't maybe going to buy an Arctic cooler, but it at least layers in another thing. We do other micro conversions like clicking to get directions to a store, get the number to a store. So I see this Arctic ad. Now I can click here to call a Walmart store nearby. Google can track that. So those are really valuable. And then we're looking at baseline sales. We're trying to understand what are my baseline sales here? What's my growth rate? And am I accelerating beyond that? Because I think that's really what matters the most, right? Is am I seeing a measurable lift? And so with the Arctic study, just to kind of break that down a little bit, we had like 3 test cells, so 19 markets, but 3 different kind of groups of markets. One group, 12% measurable lift. Another group was 15% lift. And then the final group was 25% lift, give or take. Maybe it was 23. I don't know. But it was a big lift. And what was really interesting, Andrew, is they did a similar test with connected TV. So it was like, I don't remember what platforms, maybe Hulu, Netflix, not really sure. They saw no detectable lift at all. But with YouTube, just crushed it. We got an agency excellence award for that effort. And so really it's like you've got to stack some measurement tools together, or you've got to work with somebody like House, right? To really see the impact. But I think for most people, it's a matter of, okay, I'm tracking D2C. I know that's not the full story. So let me track Amazon, let me track search lift, let me track any kind of micro conversion in-store visits if that's relevant, and let me kind of pull that together to get a better picture. But then it's also looking at like your tried and true, and I know Taylor Holiday talks about this a lot. Calculate MER, right? Calculate AMER. Is that improving over time at scale? It should be, and if so, you're on the right track.
Yeah, there's a lot there. That's a great answer. Thank you for that. And first, thank you for correcting me. You're right. I said 70% increase in when I was talking about that Olivia episode. That's totally wrong. It's definitely not.
It's a 3.4.
Yeah, it's right. It's a 340% increase, whatever. Yeah. I had flipped it in my mind what the decrease was. So yeah, that's right. Your YouTube ads are performing maybe 3.5x roughly better than what you see, as well as what you see in the account. That's like a really big number. And I think part of the deal here is this omni-channel thing that you're pointing to, which definitely is part of the question. And you said in the beginning of this that, you maybe it was with Arctic or a different brand you were referencing, but that you saw 2 sales in omni-channel sort of additional channels relative to 1 on D2C from YouTube. That is not hard to believe, in part because most retail still happens not on e-commerce, right? So e-commerce represents 17 or 18% of total retail in the US right now. Mm-hmm. Secondly, if these other channels if it was like a 1-to-1 or even no sort of additional lift, like then you would not go into these other channels because they would be by definition cannibalizing D2C, which is, whatever, it would just reduce focus. Exactly. So theoretically, this is the whole point of going into omni-channel retail, which is that like it expands your ability to reach more customers where they are and generates incremental sales for your business. And that's the promise of it, right? With massive amounts of scale and margin and all those kinds of things. So, I think both those points are really right. And what it frames up for me is this idea that I think is so important, which is that your marketing ultimately matters at the level of the bank account, whether that's happening through your D2C business or through your Amazon business or through your retail channels. And what I think a lot of people still get wrong is they get so narrowly focused on measurements that they try to track every sale back to every individual channel, when in fact, the moment that you create an omni-channel business, especially, this is actually even true if you're D2C pure play, but to a certain degree, you will never track every sale. But the moment that you go across other channels is the moment you have to say, how do we measure the lift against the whole business? And how do we think about this, not at the level of some individual ad that gets clicked on or whatever it is. And that is doubly true in my experience if the offer is basically the same across multiple channels, right? So if you're running a product where it is basically the same offer in two different channels or close, first of all, if you have Amazon alone, people are going to buy it on Amazon because it's actually probably cheaper there because you don't have to pay for shipping and it gets there faster. So, so just expect that to happen, right? But in the end, the way you measure this is there more money coming into your bank account? And if it is, you're probably moving the basic right way, right? That's the way that I would think about it. And I actually think people are starting to see that more, partly because of the incrementality awareness and some of that. And they're starting to go like, oh, YouTube actually can and does work in ways that I didn't see, and it can happen. I mean, those Arctic numbers that you just shared are like bananas. Like those are just they're like really great, huge, compelling numbers across a lot of things,
Yeah. And what's interesting is, and we saw this with Boom. So Boom Beauty, Ezra Firestone, longtime friend, longtime client for the longest time. And they're spending way more on Meta than they were on YouTube, but we helped them launch on YouTube, got to the number 2 source of new customers for a long time, but they were not on Amazon. And so they were like doing 20 million a year, something like that. We helped them launch on Amazon. So we built out their storefront, built out their PDPs, got, product into fulfillment centers, all that. So we helped them launch on Amazon. First year, they did almost $6 million in sales on Amazon, and D2C did not go backwards. It was crazy. Now, since then, like some of their growth has been, we can see a little bit of cannibalization with Amazon versus D2C, but it really just showed, to your point, there are a lot of people that would see those Boom ads and think, I'll go to Amazon, see if it's there. It's not there? All right, I'll just buy something else. And they didn't buy. And so, it makes every advertising thing you invest in, whether that's Meta or YouTube, works better when you're on those platforms. It's one of those things I think people are coming around to. They're coming around to the idea of incrementality being more important than in-platform ROAS.
More than an MTA or an MMM,
more than MTA. Right. MTA is flawed, right? Like I've got some friends at MTA tools, like they can be useful, but they're flawed. Like it's just a third version of being flawed, right?
Yeah, right.
So I think you've got to look at total sales. Yeah, for sure.
It's helpful. Let's jump over with the last 15 minutes here over to creative a little bit. So actually, let me ask one highly specific question about shorts first. Okay, this will kind of get us into the creative stuff. I've seen some stuff around shorts growing as more viable for D2C clickable, especially because there's ability to port over your vertical ads from Meta to YouTube Shorts. That's been one of the big challenges with going from Meta to YouTube in the past, is that YouTube is horizontal aspect ratio, often on a TV. Meta is vertical on a phone. So Shorts maybe solves that a little bit. Shorts, it's a vertical aspect ratio. And so maybe you could take your ads from one to the other. Is there anything we should know right now about Shorts? What do you see there?
Yeah, what's really interesting is, and you talked about like TV placements, and it's north of 50% of all YouTube views are on smart TVs. I think Olivia said 65%. That's higher than what I've seen, but I've definitely seen north of 50. My kids, believe it or not, when I let my kids have TV time, several of them choose to watch YouTube on TV, and a few of them even watch Shorts on TV, which is just kind of weird to me, but they do. So that is the part of YouTube, the platform inside of YouTube that is most directly translates with your social creative. So Instagram Reels, TikTok ads, those can translate directly to Shorts. I have not seen, however, though, Andrew, like something that scales just with Shorts. So, hey, we're just going to run Shorts ads. We're going to go to the moon on YouTube. I've never seen that happen. We've seen, like with Native, we pulled from their TikTok creator content, some of the Instagram Reel stuff. It was crushing it for remarketing with YouTube, and we used it to grow with YouTube spend. But I've never seen it as a standalone work super well. What generally works great is if you can take like the same basic type of content, create a version that is Shorts related, that's more landscape that can go on connected TVs or tablets or your phone if you're watching, in landscape mode, and then something that's good for in-stream mobile. So it's kind of 2 to 3 versions of essentially the same ad. You put those all in the same ad group together. That works really, really well.
Okay, that's really helpful. So let's then kind of carry on that thought over to the level of creative. You mentioned this right at the beginning of this conversation, which is the idea that maybe you would need a little more polish. I've sort of seen mixed things about the relationship between polish. Maybe people actually think they need too much polish on YouTube, so they shoot too expensive of ads or whatever, and they think that's what's going to win. Like, give us some guideposts to like how to think about this, and maybe let's think about that person who's winning on Meta and trying to expand to YouTube still. Okay, so that person has an idea of what angles are winning on Meta. They have an idea like conceptually how to frame their brand, what message to say, but they need to think about the next stage. So the first part of the question would be, do they take that message and then basically port it over to YouTube but redress it? Or do they need to think about maybe a totally different message? And then the second question would be, whichever the answer is, what about the dressing? Like, how does it need to look more beautiful? Can it be a little bit lo-fi, hi-fi? Like, what do we think about that?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So I generally like to test with what we believe and what we have data to back it, what we know works, right? So this hook or these 5 hooks really work. This product demonstration, it works, right? This landing page converts cold traffic. I want to start there with YouTube. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So worked with this automotive brand. We got them to maybe 300,000 to 600,000 a month in YouTube spend for years, right? Just cranked along. Their winning ads basically for the whole time was a mashup of UGC, couple of influencers as well, not like well-known influencers, but it was a mashup, but it had edits and text, a little bit of music. I don't think that's super important, but I had a little bit of music. So I think you run into trouble if you take your ad directly from Meta and kind of shoehorn it into YouTube. That probably won't work, except for on Shorts. But if you take those concepts and those winning ads and you mash them together, maybe you need a little bit of an intro, like a narration intro. Maybe you need an outro with an offer. You probably need to pull in some text and maybe need to cut to some B-roll or that type of thing. But I would start with those things. I think there's a few things to keep in mind here. On Meta, you've got the ad, but then you've got that big block of text that you can use however you want above it. And so maybe sometimes the video is the hook, but then the copy above does more of the closing, right? And then you got a call to action button, all those things. You got to remember on YouTube, the video does the whole thing. It does all of it. So like you've got to hook them. You got to frame it right. You got to overcome objections. You got to demonstrate the product. You have to create some social proof. You have to then have probably a couple of offers mentioned there, a couple of times mentioning to go check it out, like visit Walmart or go to the .com or click here or whatever, and then a really strong CTA to finish it. And so that's where we've seen the best results, is where we pull from the hooks and from the angles and from the product demos that we know works, but we're pulling that together into a narrative. Another thing we've seen work really well, and this worked really well for a food brand that I can't mention, but everyone would know it, where we call it a split screen UGC, where basically we took like that vertical UGC content. So think about that like as a third of the landscape. The other 2/3 was either product shots with close-ups with a little bit of text, or it was like product in action or people surfing or like doing stuff that kind of fit the brand. So now and it looked pretty good. So this worked on tablet, worked on desktop, but worked on TV, right? And so what's interesting is we took who was their best influencer, and this content was crushing it on Facebook. We ran it mostly as is with a little bit of tweaks on YouTube. Never really worked. We made it a little bit longer, and then we did the split screen UGC, and that shot up to their number one YouTube video quickly. And so I think that's kind of a clever way to use it. In fact, I just saw, I know you know Sean from The Ridge, he's been on my pod a couple times, was just watching TV at night and saw it pop up where it's like, it was, a third of, action shots, and then just the other 2/3 was a close-up of Ridge with some text and reviews and stuff like that. So that type of setup works really well. I think where people can get into trouble, potentially, although this can work as well, is they want to swing for the fences, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to pay $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 for my first YouTube ad. I think that's nuts, right? Like, now I will say some of the ads that have scaled the most, and we partner with Raindrops, so shout out to Jacques Spitzer and the team there. Legend. We collaborated on native for like 2 or 3 years together. Some of the best performing native ads ever were their ads. But those are expensive, right? And it's like they'll do a better job if you come to them saying, these are all the creatives that have worked for me, right? So now let's ideate and iterate from this. So I think if you want to find something that's like just a viral smash where you can, get hundreds of millions of paid views profitably, you probably need something like that. You probably need something that's like a native ad from Raindrop or like Squatty Potty, from the years gone by, or Poopery or something like that. Those are the ones that really, really scale. But I wouldn't start there, right? Start there with your proven hooks, angles, concepts, demos. Put that into a format that fits for YouTube and really learn and grow. And you can achieve some nice scale there and then go big on production.
I think that idea of combining vertical video with multiple other vertical frames as a way to sort of game the horizontal thing is really clever. I think it's a really clever idea. People should try that and then email me at podcast@videogrowth.com. And tell me how it goes.
As long as like it's relatively simple, but if you have just a good editor, like you don't want the 2/3 side to be just static, like you want a little bit of movement there. Yeah. But it does not have to be complex. But that's a way to add polish, right? So like that, graphically speaking, can look good. Then you've got the raw UGC or influencer. Like that combo is what we've seen work the best on YouTube, especially to start.
Yeah. Okay, one more highly specific question, then I'll give you a little space to just add anything else you want to add. But this is, sometimes people talk about the amount of essentially free viewership you get on YouTube videos versus Meta, and also the fact that YouTube is generally watched with sound on, which Meta may not be. Is there anything about that highly specific element of how YouTube ads are played? I forget what the number is, right? You don't get charged if it's less than X number of seconds or something like that. So sometimes people will say like your creative on YouTube can take a little longer to get to the point than it can on Meta or something like that. People will say that. And I don't know if you think that's true. I'm not going to put those words in your mouth at all, but I'm just curious like how that works out for advertisers at the creative side. If they can do something a little bit different, whereas Meta, it's like hook really hard, product really hard right away. Do not do a big reveal at the end. People will not watch to get there, that kind of deal. So yeah, anything about that specific, how much do you get for free and what should you do about that?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. So let me talk about the sound on part first. It'll be quick, but I think it's important. So that's another big deal is sometimes the ads that work best, sometimes the video ads that work best on Meta are just like demo with no voiceover, just music, like just in case someone turns the sound on, but it's just you're seeing the action and you're reading the text. Those ads generally don't work well on YouTube. So you need sound. You need a voiceover. You need to actually hear what the influencer or the customer is saying. So it's like 90% of the time people watch YouTube with the sound on, right? So as they're scrolling the feed, maybe sometimes you see some stuff that's not sound on. You got to click on it and whatnot. But for the most part, sound is on. So just adding a voiceover, so like say you did a mashup of different product demos that work well on Meta, just adding a voiceover to that, explaining why the product is great and what's happening, that's going to increase the effectiveness, going to increase watch time, click-through rate, it's going to improve the CPA, all of that. So that's super important. In terms of how much they see for free, if the ad is over 30 seconds, then they have to watch this 30-second mark or you don't pay. Or if it's like a 15-second, they got to watch the all 15 seconds or you don't pay. The difference there, though, or the exception there, though, is if someone clicks on it, then that counts as well. Or if they're purchasing, if they watch like 10 seconds and then Google can track that they purchased, they'll count that as an engaged view. That shows up in certain parts of the of the measurement as well. So you got to kind of keep that in mind. But I still like to hook people pretty hard in the beginning. Now you've got 5 seconds. So 5 seconds that they're kind of forced to watch, where they got to close the whole window if they're really mad at you and don't want to watch it. But generally speaking, so that there's like this kind of new story arc that we talk a lot about, and YouTube has got some content on this. But it's kind of like if you think about a movie trailer, good movie trailers often start with like explosion, action, guns firing, backs up, tells a little bit of the story. Another high point, more action, backs up a little bit more, tells the story, and then it's like, leaves you hanging or whatever to make you want to go watch the movie. What does not work, I believe, in any context right now, is like this slow build up to the story arc. So start slow. We're telling a story. Someone's in their kitchen and they're having a nice cup of coffee, and then it builds up to a climax and it comes back down. That generally doesn't work. So I like to hook high. Now, we have seen some things like my buddy Ryan McKenzie at True Earth, laundry detergent strips. They had this ad, and we were in their YouTube, helped them launch on YouTube and stuff. They had this ad that a guy named Joseph Wilkinson created. But at the beginning, it was like, what do you not mix with water? And it was like electronics, and people are dumping water on a computer, and witches, and like the witches melting or whatever. So, and then it was like, and laundry detergent. And so it was like, what do you mean by that? And then it went into the pitch of why would you use this little laundry detergent strip instead of a big jug of laundry detergent? And so it still create a little bit of mystery. Like, why are we seeing someone dump water on electronics? Why is there a witch melting? Things like that. But we're still starting pretty high, and then we're backing up and telling the story. And so I still prefer that. Different people have different philosophies. Like, hey, show the brand in the first 5 seconds. That way, if they skip, they still get the brand impression. I think that's okay, but I don't really get hung up on that. I'm much more concerned about, I want to hook the right people with something that's related to the product in those 5 seconds. And then I want to get them to keep watching. But one thing we're seeing with some creatives, like we saw this with some Arctic creatives, where on connected TVs, we were seeing view rates of like 80%, 85%. So 85% of people, and we had millions of views, like 85% of people choosing not to skip. Kind of crazy. Generally speaking, 20 to 50%, like that's pretty good. But these were like 80, which is nuts. So you get the right creative people will consume it. And then you're talking about low CPMs. Like I think for Arctic, we were getting like under $4 CPMs, like it's just nuts when you do it the right way.
Yeah, that's quite an outcome. Brett, where should people follow up with you if they want to work with you or learn more from you, or what's the best place to go next?
Absolutely. So omgcommerce.com. You get connected to the podcast there. Got some free resources. Have kind of like this 11 checklist of how to get started on YouTube, which is a valuable resource. And I can give you the direct link to that too, Andrew, to check that out.
Yeah, send it over.
I do post on LinkedIn, so check me out there. And then feel free to email me, brett@omgcommerce.com, and would love to connect and talk shop.
Cool. All right, man. Thanks so much for your time. This was really helpful.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew.
Fantastic conversation with Brett as far as I'm concerned. I tried as much as possible to make my questions really tactical so that you could take this, learn from it, implement the things that he is talking about doing, especially as I said in the intro, if you have had meta ad success, how do you take that and port it over into YouTube? Brett really knows his stuff, as you can tell from that. So go check out more of his content. We mentioned it there at the end where you can go do that. There's also links in the show notes for all those things. I'd also love to hear from you. Podcast@ajfgrowth.com is the place you can email me, reach out to me on X @AndrewJFaris. I would love to also have you sign up for my newsletter at ajfgrowth.com, where you can put your email address in the pop-up or the footer there. Both of those will get you my newsletter as well as my 4 free essential e-commerce resources, which will be a help to you. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're doing those things and to follow up with my sponsors, Workspace 6, workspace6.io. It's the place to do that. And my friends at More Staffing, morestaffing.co/AF. Both folks that I'm really happy to recommend to you. Really happy to have as sponsors on the show. So thanks so much for watching, for listening. All kinds of great episodes coming up. You do not want to miss them. So make sure you subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.